All right, today we're jumping into a story that is just timeless. It's all about incredible courage in the face of, well, impossible odds. And look, this isn't just some dusty old tale. It's practically a blueprint for how a single person can literally change the course of history. And get this, our hero? Not some mighty warrior or a powerful king. Nope, she's an orphan living in a foreign land.
So this really brings us to the central question, the one that hangs over this entire story. It sets the stakes so incredibly high. I mean, how does an orphan defeat an entire empire? Think about it for a second. We're talking about someone with zero political power, no army, and a secret she can't let anyone discover. How does she stand up to a global superpower that's literally plotting to wipe out her entire people? Well, let's get into it.
Okay, so our story kicks off right in the heart of the massive Persian Empire. We're talking about a kingdom under the absolute rule of King Xerxes. And this guy, he throws a feast that lasts for 180 days. I mean, can you even imagine? It's all about showing off his immense wealth and power. But right after this huge display of greatness, something totally unexpected happens that's going to create a massive power vacuum at the very top. And what happens is pretty wild. It all starts with the queen at the time, Queen Vashti. King Xerxes, who's had a bit too much to drink, orders her to come out and basically be paraded like a trophy in front of all his guests. And she says, no, just flat out refuses. Well, this act of defiance gets her banished, just like that. And this, right here, creates the opening. A search begins for a brand new queen, and Esther is one of the many hopefuls in line.
So this is where we meet Hadassah. She's a young Jewish orphan, but she goes by her Persian name, Esther. She was raised by her cousin, Mordecai, and she's brought to the palace along with all the other young women. But there's something about her grace, her humility. She just wins over everyone she meets, and that includes the king. He's so taken with her that he places the royal crown on her head. She's the new queen. But, and this is absolutely crucial, she's following Mordecai's specific instructions. Keep your Jewish identity a complete secret.
So, okay, Esther is now the queen. You'd think that's the happy ending, right? Well, not quite, because a new tension is starting to brew inside the palace walls. The story is about to introduce some key players who are going to drive the central conflict, and a major test of loyalty is right around the corner.
So Mordecai, her cousin, is just sitting at the king's gate one day when he overhears something absolutely terrifying. Two of the king's guards are plotting to assassinate King Xerxes. Mordecai doesn't hesitate for a second. He immediately gets word to Queen Esther. She then goes straight to the king and warns him. And she's very careful to give Mordecai all the credit. The plot is foiled, the traitors are executed, and boom, the king's life is saved.
But here's a really crucial part of the story. Despite literally saving the king's life, Mordecai gets nothing. Not a thing. No reward, no promotion, no thank you. His heroic act is just written down in the official records, the royal chronicles, and then it's basically forgotten. Now, you're going to want to file that little detail away because, believe me, it becomes incredibly important later on.
And right after this, the king promotes this new guy, Haman, and notice his title, Haman the Agagite. That name is a huge clue. It means he's a descendant of an ancient, bitter enemy of the Jewish people. So there's this deep, historical hatred already there, and it's about to fuel everything that happens next. A royal decree goes out. Everyone has to bow down to Haman, but Mordecai, as a devout Jew, refuses. He will not bow to any man, only to God. And just like that, the stage is set for a very, very dangerous confrontation.
And right here, this is where the crisis really kicks into high gear. What started as a personal grudge from one very proud, very angry man is about to blow up into a mortal threat against an entire nation of people.
Haman's rage over Mordecai's defiance is just off the charts. He's not content with just punishing one man. No, he wants to annihilate his entire people. So he goes to the king and completely lies, talking about some rebellious group of people in the kingdom. Then he casts lots, which were called pur, to pick the exact day for their destruction. And the king, without even asking which people, just hands Haman his own signet ring to make the genocidal decree official. Just like that.
Well, when news of this horrible decree gets out, Mordecai sends a message to Esther. He begs her, "You have to go to the king." But Esther is terrified, and for good reason. In Persia, approaching the king without being summoned was a death sentence. But Mordecai pushes back with this incredibly powerful challenge. He tells her, "Don't think for a second your royal status will save you.
He says, "Who knows? Maybe you were made queen for this exact moment, for such a time as this."
And that is the moment everything changes for Esther. You can feel her shift from sheer terror to this incredible, courageous resolve. She tells Mordecai to gather all the Jews in the city to fast with her for 3 days. And after that, she says she will go to the king, even though it's against the law. And with those famous words, "If I perish, I perish," she completely accepts the risk. She's stepping into her destiny, no matter the cost.
Okay, so the suspense is just ratcheting up like crazy now. Esther has a plan, but it is so dangerous. She's about to set a series of events in motion that are going to lead to one of the most dramatic, unbelievable turnarounds you can possibly imagine.
So Esther invites the king and Haman to a banquet, and then a second one. And on the night between these two banquets, something amazing happens. King Xerxes can't sleep, just can't get to sleep. So in what feels like way more than a coincidence, he calls for the royal records to be read aloud to him. And as they're reading, they come across that long-forgotten entry about how a man named Mordecai saved his life from those assassins.
The king is stunned. He realizes this incredible act of loyalty was never rewarded. And right at that moment, who walks into the court? Haman. And get this, Haman is literally there to ask the king for permission to hang Mordecai on a massive gallows he just finished building. But before Haman can even open his mouth, the king turns to him and asks this deeply ironic question.
The king asks, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? And Haman's arrogance is just off the charts. He's thinking, of course he's talking about me. So he lays out the most over-the-top, lavish ceremony he can dream up. He says, oh, you should dress him in the king's own royal robes, put him on the king's personal horse, and have one of the highest nobles lead him through the city streets, shouting for everyone to hear how much the king delights in him.
And you can just imagine the look on Haman's face when the king says, "Great idea, go at once and do everything you just suggested for Mordecai the Jew." Wow, the reversal is just stunning. The humiliation has to be absolute. Haman is forced to give every single honor he just described for himself to the one man in the world he was about to destroy. So then we get to the second banquet, the big climax. The king once again asks Esther, "What is your request? I'll give you anything." And this is it. This is the moment. She finally reveals everything. She tells him her deepest secret, that she is a Jew. And then she tells him that an evil man has plotted to annihilate her and her entire people.
The king is enraged. He demands to know who would dare to do such a thing. And Esther looks across the table, points her finger and says, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. And just like that, Haman's fate is sealed. He's taken away and hanged on the very same gallows, 75 feet tall, that he had built for Mordecai. I mean, you can't get more poetic justice than that. Okay, so Haman, the villain, is gone. But believe it or not, the story isn't over. There is still a huge problem. That original decree, the one calling for the destruction of all the Jews, sealed with the king's ring, is still the law of the land. And in the Persian Empire, once a royal decree is made, it can never, ever be revoked. So Esther has to go before the king again, pleading for her people. And here's the clever solution. Since the old law can't be canceled, the king empowers Mordecai, who is now his new second-in-command, to write a brand new law. This new decree, also sealed with the king's ring, doesn't cancel the first one, but it does something just as powerful. It grants the Jews the right to assemble and to defend themselves against anyone who tries to attack them.
So on that day, the day that was supposed to be their destruction, the Jews defend themselves, and they are victorious. The numbers are staggering. Over 75,000 of their enemies were defeated, including Haman's 10 sons. But there's another number here that's just as important, and that's the amount of plunder they took. And that number is 0. They took nothing. This is so crucial because it shows their fight wasn't about greed or gain, it was purely about survival. And this incredible deliverance is still commemorated to this very day. A festival is established called Purim. It's named after the pur, those lots that Haman cast to choose the day of their destruction. And it completely flips the script. It transforms a day that was marked for death and sorrow into a massive celebration of life with feasting, joy, and giving gifts to the poor.
You know, the story of Esther is such a powerful reminder that real courage can come from the most unlikely people, and that sometimes our true purpose is revealed only when we're in the most difficult circumstances. It really leaves all of us with a pretty powerful question to think about in our own lives, right? We all face these defining moments.